안녕하세요, 여러분. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Embassy of International Students. Today, we are here with one of our team leaders, Ewan. Hi, Ewan.
Hi everyone.
Where he will introduce his story of how he came to Korea. Well, for those who don't know, so Embassy of International Students is an international student society aiming to unite the understanding of Korean society as well as each other's culture. We created a window of opportunities for foreign students to speak out and help provide solutions to others in Korea to establish a strong connection between the multicultural society here in Korea. And as of doing this, we have started a series featuring some of our talented international students live in Korea. So let's just get started to it. So Ewan, would you mind to let us know a little bit about you, like your background, where do you come from, what are you studying here, or what did you study before, or maybe some of your interests, even like your goals? Yeah, please.
Yeah. So my name's Ewan Smith. I'm 24 years old. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and I'm a GKS student. I'm currently doing my master's in political science and international relations at Korea University. I started my degree last year, but when I first came to Korea, I was an English teacher in Hagwon. I was teaching kindergarten students and elementary school students. And before that, I was teaching martial arts in Australia. Again, I was teaching little kids, so I've had a lot of experience teaching little kids. Um, Currently, I'm living around Wangshimni, fairly close to my campus. And in my free time, I do jujitsu, I play chess, I learn foreign languages, and yeah, that's about it.
Well, that's interesting. Seems like you enjoy so many Asian sport because I've heard like jitsu. You also teach martial arts. Is it like taekwondo things or like that?
Yeah, so I was teaching judo and a bit of aikido as well, like Japanese style aikido. Yeah, I've been doing that basically since I was a kid. So yeah, that's one.
Oh, is that actually the reason why you came to Korea? Because you have so many interests about this stuff.
Well, I'd say I've definitely had a lot of exposure to Asia in general as a kid. Uh, like when I was very little, when I was in elementary school, my dad was working in Japan, so I lived in Japan for a few months. But I had a bit of exposure. But to be honest, I didn't know much about Korea itself. Um, as I mentioned, I first came to Korea as an English teacher, and that was about 2 years ago. And the reason I came to Korea specifically was because my girlfriend is Korean, and I wanted to
Oh,
try living here and getting some kind of overseas experience. Um, yeah, so again, yeah, I didn't know that much about Korea before I came, but since I've been here, I've definitely learned a lot.
so it's actually one of the main reasons is you have a Korean girlfriend. Is that?
Yeah, definitely one of the
That's
reasons.
interesting. That's very interesting. Well, that's quite a compelling story. But as I understand, as you also told us that you pretty much get used to the Asian culture, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah,
Yeah.
and I also understand that many European Westerner came to Asian because they are very interested to our culture in Asia. But still, like I'm still wondering why Korea, why not Japan, or why not China or Indonesia. I came from Indonesia actually, and yeah, why is it like the K-pop culture or things like that that influence you, or is there any
Hmm.
something else?
Yeah, I mean, again, I didn't know that much about Korea. I definitely had the motivation for having a girlfriend from Korea, but in terms of culture, um, I'd say in Melbourne there's quite a lot of Korean sort of inspired things, especially recently as Korean culture has become more popular. There's more and more Korean restaurants and Korean supermarkets, and yeah, I definitely got a bit more interested because of that. To be honest, in terms of K-pop, I wasn't really that interested. I'd never have been that interested in K-pop culture. It was only really after I came to Korea that I started listening to some Korean music, and yeah, I think I might have a different experience to other people who were, I don't know, maybe very knowledgeable about Korea and then wanted to come because of that. I was kind of the other way around. I came first and then learned more about Korea after.
Oh yeah, I see. So since you've came here first, it's actually your second time coming to Korea, right? So I'm sure that I don't know how was your first time, but how's life so far in South Korea? How was your adjustment to Korean student life? Because I'm pretty sure it's much different from where you came from. Yeah. Were there any culture shock that you
Hmm.
experienced?
Yeah, well, I really enjoy my life here so far. I feel like everything's very convenient and they make things very comfortable for people. And when I first came, I don't know, the biggest difficulty was probably the language barrier. I had been learning Korean a bit by myself in Australia. I'd learned for about a year before I came. So I knew some Korean when I came. But yeah, I didn't realize that not that many people speak English well. I mean, everyone studies English a bit, but you really need to know Korean to, I don't know, to avoid a lot of difficulties while being here. So I really needed to improve a lot after I arrived. Uh, for culture shocks, I think the biggest one was the fact that people will just stare on the street
Yeah,
if
that's
you're a
true.
foreigner.
That's true.
Yeah, because Melbourne is very culturally diverse. You have people from all over the world. I can't remember the statistics, but it's something like half of the population either is an immigrant or has immigrant parents or something. So coming from that sort of city into a country that's very homogenous was definitely a bit of a culture shock. But I know that people don't have bad intentions. They're just not used to seeing foreigners like we are in Melbourne. So yeah, I know
Yeah.
there's no bad intentions behind
Yeah,
it.
that's very true.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned that you were teaching English here. And how was that teaching experience help you with your language barrier? Did you teach English with Korean or like, yeah, can you tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about that one? Yeah.
yeah. So that was a good experience teaching. Again, because I have experience with kids, I love being around kids. That was definitely a great thing for me, and it was a good way to ease myself into the Korean culture. We did, events for different holidays, and even just being around lots of kids, like lots of Korean kids, and having them like tell me random things that they like and all that. That was quite a good introduction. Um, we weren't we weren't supposed to use any Korean in the classroom because we want the kids to be completely immersed in English. So yeah, I never spoke any Korean in the classroom, but I could usually understand what the kids were saying. And some of the kids figured out that I could understand what they were saying as well. But yeah, generally I was entirely in English, and yeah, again, it was a great experience.
Uh, so then how do you solve your problem with the language barrier, Korean language barrier? Do you make any Korean friends? Because it seems like not that easy to make Korean friends, but of
Hmm,
course you have your girlfriends, right? So
yeah,
is that very helpful?
yeah. So I had a few things. One, definitely my girlfriend and her family. Whenever I was with them, I'd be speaking Korean with them usually. Or a mix of Korean and English. And also, that's how I generally talk with my girlfriend. We kind of mix Korean and English, half and half. Um, the other thing, when I came, again, because martial arts is one of my passions, I joined a judo club in Bundang where I was teaching. And I was training there for about a year and a half. So that was good as well. There was no one there who spoke any English, so that forced me to practice and just making myself go there 3 times a week and making myself chat after class to people was another really good thing. And yeah, I mean, when I first came, I was studying Korean by myself as well. Like after teaching, when I found the time, um, I started preparing for the topic test, which also was another kind of motivator, another thing that pushed me to try and improve my Korean. So yeah, I definitely had to work hard on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's quite a good example. Like what's such an inspiration, like where we can actually learn Korean, we can learn it in so many way wherever we want. And go back to the you're adjusting to the Korean culture. What was the hardest adjustment you had to make while you were in Korea?
Um, the biggest adjustment was probably living in an apartment complex as opposed to in a house because in Melbourne's a very wide kind of low density city. So almost everyone lives in a house, some kind of share house, or living with your parents, you live in a house. People only really live in apartments in this like center of the city. So it was really different for me to come and live in. an apartment building with so many other people, with a single like recycling system for everyone, with a security guard, not having a key as well. That was another big one.
Yeah.
Everyone just uses a key. My girlfriend had never seen a key before she left Korea, so
Okay.
yeah, yeah. There are a lot of small things like that which were big adjustments for me.
But how is it now? You okay living in an apartment?
Definitely, yeah. I really like it now. I think I feel like people like changing. So I've lived in a house my whole life, and I really like living in an apartment. I met other people who live in apartments and they dream of living in a house. Yeah.
Yeah, gotten to know you so many things about your experience living as a foreign student in Korea. So, like, what's next? What's your plan after graduation?
My original plan is to go back to Australia and work for the Department of Foreign Affairs because my major is international relations, and my plan was to have a master's degree to go and work in the government. But to be honest, I'm quite open. I'm happy to accept any opportunities that come. If I can find a job in Korea and live here, that would be great as well. But yeah, my current plan is to go back to Australia, and who knows, maybe at some point in the future I'll come back to Korea again.
Yeah. Okay. I hope like whatever you decide later, whatever your journey later in Korea or in Australia, it's going well for you. So as for the final message, would you mind to giving some advice for any international students who are studying in Korea or will come to Korea as or who are planning to work in Korea, like any tips or tricks?
I think one thing that I've noticed while being here is, as I said, the language barrier is one of the biggest ones, and I think it's a definite advantage if you learn at least a little bit of Korean before coming. I had a lot of friends who didn't know any Korean before coming, and they came to teach and just sort of expected to learn while they're here. But you might find that while you're here, you're actually quite busy, and you don't have that much time to sort of study in your own time. And it is a difficult language for, I think, the majority of people who, like, for the majority of native languages that people might have. So I think it's definitely a good idea to at least learn for a few months before you come to Korea, if possible.
Okay, so Ewan, thank you very much for sharing your story with us today and hope it will be beneficial for all of you guys who watch this video. And and for you guys, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, share our video. You can also follow our Facebook page and Instagram at Embassy of International Students to get daily updates about useful information for international students in Korea. And we'll see you again in the next video series of Embassy of International Students. 안녕히
Okay.
가세요.
Bye bye.